are corroborating what many of us who are attending this webinar know from our own experience and work with community members. And that is that COVID-19 is taking a toll not only on health, but is causing serious hardship. Since March of 2020, Propel has surveyed a sample of SNAP customers monthly to gain insights into the customers' experiences during COVID-19. Propel has an app. It's now called Providers. You may have known it before as Fresh EBT, and that is now used by 5 million SNAP customers. So this is a very impressive sample of 5,000 people out of that 5 million customer base that Julieta is going to describe findings from. We're pleased to have her with us today. Julieta Cuellar is Propel's Policy Research and Communications Manager, and she's going to share the top line findings from the most recent survey of that sample from November 2021. As Nomi pointed out, we hope that you will use the Q&A box to submit questions or comments, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. But Julieta, thank you so much for being with us and sharing these insights. I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Ellen, and thank you to FRAC once again for inviting us to share this information. So just to quickly give some background, as Ellen mentioned, I work at Propel, and Propel is a company where we focus on building modern, respectful, and effective technology that helps low-income Americans improve their financial health. And the Providers app is our primary product. It helps people get through the month every month, and it's the only app where users can manage government benefits side by side with debit. So just to give you like a quick overview of our user base, as Ellen mentioned, we have over 5 million people using the app every month from across the United States. So we have users in all 50 states, as well as in Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Virgin Islands. We estimate that about 2 million people use our app every day. Most of our users have children under 18. The vast majority of them are women, and looking at our user base and looking at the total population of SNAP participants across the country, we estimate that about 1 in 4 households on SNAP are actually using providers. So here are the top line findings from the survey we conducted in November. This was a sample of about 5,000 or so users. The survey runs every month for the first 2 weeks of the month, which is when we have the most traffic on the app. And here's what we found. First, more users than ever are losing their jobs, reporting losing or quitting a job in the past 30 days, while at the same time, more users than ever in the history of our survey are receiving unemployment benefits. Secondly, thankfully, the October child tax credit for those families who received it reduced housing, food, and financial insecurity once again every month since the payments have started to reach families. We're finding consistently that it is making a measurable impact, positive impact on families. Third, more users than ever are reporting being evicted or spending a night in the shelter in the past month. And lastly, the portion of users reporting that they have less than $25 on hand has been steadily going up since April, and it has now reached the highest point this year in November. So going into employment, like I said, more users than ever are saying that they have lost or quit a job in the past 30 days. Specifically, that was 12.5% reported this in November, while we've seen an all-time low in those reporting receiving unemployment benefits. Just around 2% essentially are saying they're getting unemployment benefits. And there's a racial disparity we see here as well. Well, you see like this overall percentage of people saying that they've lost or quit a job. It's about 13%. By contrast, 17% of users who identify as Black say the same, and 15% of those who identify as Latinx say that they've lost or quit a job. And you can see here in this user quote from someone who is based in Indiana, the difficulties there people face once unemployment ends. I'll let you read that to yourself now. Just to add a little bit more to this, we also look at, we ask people what their employment status is currently. And so comparing those who say, we first ask them, do you get employment benefits? And people say, no, I don't. The option is, I used to get them earlier this year and I no longer do, and then I currently get them. So we look at those people who say, I used to receive unemployment benefits earlier this year, and then we look at how they describe their current employment status, at that moment in time, this case in November. Almost 50%, well, in fact, 45% are saying that people who used to get employment benefits and no longer are, they're still looking for work and not working currently. So it doesn't seem that they have the relief of receiving an income from working, unfortunately. So moving on to the findings related to the child tax credit. Specifically, families that received the October child tax credit said that they were more likely to live in stable housing, pay rent on time, pay their utility bills in full, and have most things they need in their home. They were also less likely to spend a night in the shelter in the past 30 days, report skipping meals in the past month, or have less than $25 on hand at the moment in which they were surveyed. So I think what we're seeing really is that the child tax credit money is kind of rising to the occasion of like plugging any holes in the family budget, especially as people are losing access to unemployment, or people are having a hard time accessing rental assistance, utility assistance, etc. So here's an example from a user in Nevada saying that, it's helped them cover their utilities as they're trying to get access to unemployment benefits, and they don't understand why. Here's just a couple additional quotes from our users in their own words about how the child tax credit has affected their families. It's definitely, unfortunately, not the only response that we see, in which, every month we see people saying, is able to get like a few nights in a motel or a week in a motel because a family's like currently living in their car or on the streets or with other people. Or there's so many stories like this of people like, I was able to get my car fixed, or I was able to like put gas in my car to go to work, or any number of examples in this vein. So moving on to housing, more users are reporting than ever that they have been evicted in the past 30 days, and that they've spent a night in a shelter in the past 30 days. So as you can see in the graph here, over 5%, 5.6% of users surveyed reported being evicted in the past 30 days. And we asked them about all kinds of evictions, like eviction by a court order, eviction by a landlord, being evicted by the people that they live with. So it kind of captures a more holistic view of evictions and maybe like the very sparse official figures that are out there. And nearly 5%, 4.7% of respondents said that they had spent a night in the shelter in the past 30 days. We see racial disparity here too. Black respondents were more likely to say that they had been evicted in the past 30 days, and they were more likely to say that they had spent a night in a shelter than as compared to white respondents. This is like just an interesting tidbit I want to include that we're still kind of exploring, but it does look like the portion of users that report paying mortgages. We have a question where we ask, like, how do you describe your housing? And it's like, I pay rent to a landlord, I pay rent to friends, I live with people, and I help out with expenses. One of the options is I pay a mortgage, and it's a small portion of our user base. Most of our users are renters. But interestingly, the portion of people saying that they are, homeowners, they pay a mortgage, has been decreasing, as you can see in this graph, since about May. And it's down quite a bit. In addition, we also asked people, who do you live with? And we've seen that there's been big increases in people who live in households with 3 or more people, whereas people who live in households with 2 people or they live alone has been decreasing. And we are wondering, looking at these, if this is indicative of a general displacement of people from their homes, because these like eviction and these housing metrics I had on the previous slide, looking back in the past several months, like a lot of these numbers have been getting worse and worse. So it's been a general trend of very much being in a housing crisis for our user base. And then finally, I'll just add that Black and Latinx households are also just more likely to be living with more people, to have 3 or more in the household. Here are just a couple of quotes from our users that kind of speak to this housing situation. I'll let you read them. So as you can see in the second quote, there might be some degree of voluntary, if you can say that, people moving in with one another to try to make ends meet. And then finally, focusing on financial stability. They should say over 58%, or approximately 59% of users have less than $25 on hand at the moment of being surveyed. As you can see from this graph, this has been on the increase since April, going up and up, and it's now reached an all-time high that we really haven't seen since about this time last year. And here just a couple more quotes from our users on how they're trying to manage. So I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about the child tax credit in a bit more detail, because I think it's of interest to everyone on this call. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, it really is seeming to have a positive impact. It's a benefit that people are still getting in the face of seeing some other benefits kind of fall away. It's reaching quite a lot of our users. A lot of our users are eligible. So we've been trying to track receipt pretty closely from the beginning. We do this like pop-up survey every month in the app about a week after the payment has gone out. And it's kind of like our first check on like, is the payment reaching people? What's going on? And these numbers are pretty consistent with what we've seen every month. So almost 80% of our users that have children under 18, which are, we generally view as eligible because they're low income and meet other requirements. About 80% of them got the November child tax credit payment. But we've seen pretty stubborn sort of numbers on those who say every month that they're not getting it. And also on people who don't know if they got it, which suggests some issues. And since July, since the first payments came out from the child tax credit, we've been following 10 families who are users of the Providers app, who all have children under 18 in their homes, so are all eligible for the child tax credit. We've been interviewing and surveying them specifically every month, trying to get a qualitative dimension on the impact that this new benefit is having on families, as well as the impact that not getting it is having on families, right? So, we ask them some of the same questions every month, different things on occasion. And in November, we talked to people about inflation, which has been in the news a lot. And I can say unequivocally that everybody is feeling it. A lot of people mentioned it completely unprompted by us. Most people say that they've noticed higher prices in the last few weeks. One of the participant families, the mom was saying, thought the prices were higher because it was just because it was Thanksgiving, and that they would go back down after Thanksgiving, and then they didn't, and she was, short on her budget as a result. A couple of people mentioned very specifically, like, I go to the dollar store now and things are $3 and $5 at the dollar store. Another mom talked about how she just got a chicken instead of a turkey for Thanksgiving when she saw the prices, and that she's really been looking at her budget, and she estimates that it costs her $75 more to buy the same things, when she does her shopping trip every 10 days. And in general, we also asked people, how are you coping with these changes? And everyone was saying, well, you have to make it work, right? And that mostly means sacrificing things and making compromises, right? So a lot of people talked about just budgeting more strictly, getting only what's absolutely necessary. Or one person was saying, I'll only buy things if they're on sale or if I can get a coupon. Or others are just, entirely cutting some items out from their purchases. Kind of getting to what I was mentioning before, we've definitely been observing that there's not insubstantial group of eligible families that are eligible for the child tax credit who aren't getting the child tax credit, or they're getting it with some problems or inconsistently. So we see that in the survey work, sort of in this aggregate level, but we also have seen it in just this, close look at 10 families. Overall, of the 10 families, 8 of them have been getting the child tax credit payments from the very beginning, and 2 have not. So one of the participants who has been getting child tax credit payments from the beginning suddenly started getting his payment in 2 different deposits, like one to him, like a direct deposit to him and a check to his wife, and in a total a smaller amount than he was receiving before. Started in September, and it's been happening consistently since then. He has no idea why. We had no idea why. And he finally got a letter in the IRS from the IRS last week that said that they had previously overpaid him, and that's why they were deducting money from the subsequent payments. And we were all quite confused by that. But, essentially his sentiment was, like he says, this quote here from him, "I wish they would have told me sooner so I could have been prepared for it. It would have been a lot easier." Because initially when this change happened, it kind of left him in a lurch. And then this is from a user who hasn't gotten a single child tax credit payment. Doesn't know why. We don't know why. We've all tried to look into it. And she finally got through to the IRS after waiting on hold for over 4 hours. And the representative told her that the portal, which we've all been relying on to see what the status of child tax credit payments are, was essentially obsolete, and that she just needs to file taxes next year to correct some mistake that was made in her taxes last year to get her money. And, most families that we talk to can't wait. So what I'm going to do now is I want to share a little bit more from 2 of the participants in this kind of qualitative study we've been doing. And it's essentially sort of showing the contrast that we see in the positive impact that getting this new extra money has had on families who have gotten it, especially as it pertains to the holidays versus, I'm talking about this last person I just mentioned who hasn't gotten a single payment, doesn't know why, apparently it was a mistake on her taxes, and the, very negative impact, frankly, that it's having on her this holiday season. These are it's the first time I share audio clips from interviews. We have their permission to do so, but we don't want to record this portion of the webinar. So I believe that Nomi is going to stop recording now. Could you just give me a confirmation before I